I saw one of these on YouTube. It's known as the Trammel of Archimedes or the ellipsograph. Some people just call it the do-nothing machine. Believe it or not, it was created over 24 centuries ago by Archimedes. I'd like to try and show you how to make one, but don't follow every one of my instructions because I had a scary event occur during this construction. I have this piece of scrap melamine, and since it has one nice edge on it, I'm going to try to utilize that as the outer edge of this contraption. First, I set my table saw angle at approximately 35 degrees. I now set my rip fence at 5 inches. Here you can see I'm going to take that piece of melamine and cut that 35-degree angle across the entire expanse of the piece of wood I have. I'm careful to hold it against the fence and pull it right through the blade. Keeping the same blade angle, I move the rip fence to 2 inches. And I'll use a piece of scrap hard maple to make my slider pieces. I've exaggerated the size of the rip to accommodate an angle on both sides of the piece of wood. Okay, here we go with the cut through the maple. Notice I have a push stick. I run the maple up against the fence. With the power on, I slide it through the 35-degree angle blade, and I use the push stick to slide it all the way through the blade. And as I pass it through, reach around and pull the wood out. Notice the setup I have here. See if you can predict what problem I'm going to run into. I didn't predict it until too late and almost could have had a catastrophic event right here. I'm pushing it through the blade and watch the front edge of the wood with my push piece of lumber kind of letting go here and lifting up, and it rises, and right about here I notice the whole thing's ready to fly in my face. So I'm looking at this and I'm thinking what I should have done is had a fingerboard, a second one further up on the fence to hold this down. But I would like to challenge some of you watching this that have more experience with table saws than me to suggest possibly a safer way to do this operation. If you take a look at my setup here, I have a piece of scrap lumber clamped against the fence to give me a little gap from the fence, and then I'm using my miter guide to cross-cut through this piece of wood that has 35-degree angles cut on 2 sides. So I'm just cross-cutting right through it. Now, if you take a look, you can see the pieces I end up with are these 2 identical pieces that will be the sliders, and they have an angle on each side. My setup here is the same as the last setup with a piece of scrap wood clamped, in fact 2 pieces, against the fence, and now I'm going to cross-cut at 5 inches each of these pieces. Notice they have a 35-degree angle on 2 sides. So as I cut each one, you can see there's a 30-degree angle towards us and one next to the fence. So I'll end up with 2 90s for the outside and 2 35s on the inside. The first thing I did is take and cut a square of MDF 11.5 inches by 11.5 inches. I then took my 4 pieces of melamine and cut 1/16 inch drill holes through in 4 different areas. I then used a countersink drill bit to countersink above these holes. I then took the 2 slider pieces and placed them into the slots so I would know where the gluing would take place. I set a little bit of glue behind each of the 4 melamine pieces and set a tiny brad in between each hole and tapped it with a hammer, locking it in place. I then was able to take and push screws and drive them into each of the holes without the melamine pieces moving. I then ripped a piece of walnut here. You can see if it's set correctly, you will notice that the drill holes on the sliding pieces are directly in the center of each piece, and you will screw them in with the washers on top and in between when the one piece is crisscrossing in the center and the other is fully extended. I hope this all makes some sense to you. Finally, I took and turned a handle for the end of the slider rod and put candle wax on all moving surfaces and went to the table saw and trimmed off and sanded any extra base wood. I'm sorry about this finish and hope you enjoyed it.